Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to BookTrek 2024, the summer of Trek, winding down the days for the summer here. The summer is almost over. That is unbelievable. We are almost in September. Uh, and this is a BookTube event, a venerable BookTube event created by Vin at Revenant Reads. He's assembled a bridge crew of other BookTubers where we talk about Star Trek all summer long, which is exactly what I intended to do. But then I dropped the ball on BookTrek and never picked it back up again. So I'm going to make use of the last days of August to read a lot of Star Trek that I wasn't reading all season long and talk about it with you. And last night I went back to the beginning. I went back to with Star Trek fiction. It's still going on. It's still coming out in little trickles here and there. And it had its heyday when there were 4 new Star Trek novels every month, of one franchise, one iteration of the show after another. So there's lots of Star Trek out there, and that's before you even get to the fan fiction sites that used to be the heart and soul of Star Trek fiction. There's even more of it out there. There's a lot more fan fiction for Star Trek than there is mainstream fiction now. I don't quite know why that is, unless there's just no contracts, no money. How could that be? But I believe that Star Trek novels would sell in greater profusion than they're actually written. But I went back to the beginning. I went back to when there wasn't any of that. I went back to 1974, when Star Trek was off the air. There was no hope of it ever coming back on the air, and there was almost nothing in the way of books except these. The science fiction author James Blish took the job of writing up the scripts of the show, of the various episodes of the original series. And they were put out in these paperbacks. After the first one, they all had original cover, or the first or second, they all had original cover artwork. Some of that artwork is wonderful, and you get about 5 or 6 or 8 stories in each volume, and the volumes are not long. This one from 1974 is 164 pages. I'm wincing, even though I love these books, and I got a sense, the more I've been rereading them in the last couple of years, the more I get a sense for Blish's own writing here, his own personality overlaying what he's reading. They're very, very interesting in nitpicky ways because you don't really know. I imagine somewhere out there the shooting scripts must exist, but I don't know what they are. But they do vary from the shows that actually aired in some little interesting ways. Some ways that, that will interest you. If you're a long-time dyed-in-the-wool Star Trek fan, which I am, then there are some ways that will interest you. But also, you get a sense when you read more of these of what James Blish could do with bare-bones scripts. It's an unenviable job. This book is more along the same lines. It has a huge weakness, which is that the episodes that are adapted here are largely bad, with only one exception. The episodes are the alternative factor, the empath, is there in truth no beauty, a private little war, the Omega glory, all of which are substandard original Star Trek episodes, and then the Galileo 7, which is a great original Star Trek episode. So, in part, you are hampered by what you're dealing with. As Blish says himself in the introduction to this book, I'm not creating any of this. All I'm doing is overlaying a fictional narrative over what someone else has created. So there's not much that I can do. You have to wonder, I've wondered for years, what his own storytelling instincts must have been telling him to try, if only he could have, to fix some of these stories. There is no good reason why the Omega Glory, for instance, should be a bad episode. It's true that it's really dumb and hokey. Kirk encounters a planet with warring factions called the Yangs and the Coms, the Yankees and the Communists. But it didn't need to be that. Sure, it might have started off that way in a story session, but then you could have aliened it up. You could have changed it. The key of the story is that it's a renegade starship captain. Captain Tracy goes renegade, which is, in the original series, incredibly rare. Especially a full starship captain, not just a spaceship captain like Captain Merrick in Bread and Circuses. Ron Tracy is a full starship captain. And he goes rogue when he thinks that this planet has a fountain of youth, makes people immortal. He's willing to do anything for that. And he has superior technology. He has phasers. His crew is almost all gone. Our crew encounters them on the bridge of the Exeter, on the bridge of Tracy's old ship. They're not there. Tracy's not there anymore. No living crew members are. Just a whole bunch of powdery white substance, which McCoy quickly analyzes to be the crew just desiccated and turned to salt. No, all the water extracted from their remains and then powderized. And that's a macabre moment in the original show, but in the adaptation, they play a tape, a recording from the ship's doctor before all that happened, saying that, you know, if you're on board the ship, you're doomed, you've been infected. And one of Kirk's landing party says, "Oh my God, get me out of here." And Kirk reprimands him sharply and says, "This is heroism that you're watching." And I don't think that was ever filmed. I don't think I remember that from the original episode. I've seen the original episode a million times. I don't think I've ever seen that line. That if that is filmed, that is certainly superior to what we do see in the filmed version of that script. But it goes in the other direction as well. In the Galileo 7, for instance, this is the story of Mr. Spock's first command, although that is retconned out of existence during the novels of the original episode. But he's commanding a crew members from the Enterprise on the starship, the shuttle, the Galileo, when they land on a planet that is full of gigantic, towering, barbaric, spear-throwing aliens. And they are lost. And Kirk, on board the Enterprise, is looking for them, but he is under strict diplomatic orders to be elsewhere by a certain time. And he has an imperious ambassador on board who's going to take command of the vessel and make him stop looking by a certain arbitrary time point. Now, I was watching that episode and I was thinking, no, no. Discipline of service is one thing, but Kirk would just refuse. But in the episode, we are led to believe that he will not refuse. And so they're frantically looking while we are seeing the travails of Spock's party down on the planet as they try to fend off these monstrous creatures, while at the same time trying to get off the planet or at least achieve orbit. And at one point, crew members die. These creatures kill some of the crew members of the Galileo. And at one point, there's a body. They've retrieved a crew member's body, and one of the hostile crew members, Mr. Boma, wants to take the body outside and bury it and have Spock say some words over it. And Spock says, "Well, there isn't time for any such thing. What are you talking about? Our priority is to get off this planet." And in the show, in the story, Mr. Boma says, "Well, you see, Mr. Spock, I would insist on this even if it was your body back there." And McCoy says, "Mr. Boma." And Mr. Boma snaps at McCoy and says, "Oh, I'm tired of this guy." And Scotty, who's next in command after Spock, says, "That's enough. This is a commander of the service that you're talking to." In the story, that's what Scotty says. In the episode, Scotty simply says, "That's enough." And you get the real strong sense that he's defending his friend, not just the chain of command. That's gone completely in the written script. I can't help but think that on the fly, either Leonard Nimoy or Jimmy Doohan or both decided to change it, to fix it. And they kept it. And little details like that, positive or negative, crop up all throughout this book. Although you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. There's no way to make a good story, a good Blish adaptation, out of a story that isn't all that good. So the Galileo 7 was the only really interesting thing in here to read. Once again, no offense to James Blish, but once again, reading these stories made me wish that Bantam or Paramount or whoever would allow this to be done again. A novel called The Galileo 7, a novel of that episode, could easily... Well, that's awful piercing, isn't it? I'd have to scream my head off to hear over it. Every video today. Every video. And unneeded. There was no traffic. Person just felt like it. That's all. We are phasers when we need them. Anyway, you could easily make a novel out of the story of the Galileo 7. You could easily do it. I could do it myself, and there are a lot more talented writers out there than I am. So naturally, I was reading these stories. I was wishing for that, despite the nostalgia hit that this book is. But the thing that struck me the most, the nostalgia hit that struck me the most, is the little prefatory note that James Blish pens to the book, where he says that the readers of these books surprised him by deluging him with mail, asking him to include a preface with every book. He said that my original idea was that I would make a preface if I had something interesting to say or news to relate. And since I didn't do a preface for a couple of volumes. The fans said, "No, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you too. You're giving us these things, and they mean the world to us. So please write a preface." And his note in the preface to this book is openly touched by that. That was heartwarming. I really enjoyed that. So that's my captain's log for today. My Book Trek field report for today is Star Trek 10. I don't know. Maybe I'll do another one of these as Book Trek winds down. Maybe I will, but I'm thinking a whole novel tonight might be better. A favorite novel. I promise it won't be my favorite Star Trek novel. I've talked about The Price of the Phoenix quite enough, unless you want me to. Unless you want me to, I won't talk about The Price of the Phoenix again. But there are plenty of other things that I can talk about. So I'll wrap this up for now. We'll hope for quieter videos tomorrow. I hope in vain for quieter videos tomorrow. And I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.